Inside a hushed witness room at Auburn Prison on August 6, 1890, a low hum fills the air as the man strapped to a strange oak chair begins to convulse. And then a horrifying realization dawns: the procedure has failed. This moment of abject horror wasn't just a technical failure. It was the public climax of a brutal corporate war designed to weaponize death itself. The story of the first electric chair is not about justice. It's a story about market share, corporate sabotage, and the calculated destruction of a human being. In the late 1880s, America stood at the precipice of a new age, an age powered by electricity. The future was being forged in a conflict known as the War of the Currents. On one side stood Thomas Edison, a titan of invention, the champion of direct current, or DC. His system was the established standard powering the first incandescent lights. But DC had a fatal flaw. It could not travel long distances without losing power, requiring expensive power stations on nearly every city block. On the other side stood George Westinghouse, an industrialist who gambled his fortune on a rival system, alternating current, or AC. AC could be transmitted hundreds of miles with minimal power loss, making it vastly more efficient and economical. It was the clear technological winner, poised to electrify the entire continent and render Edison's infrastructure obsolete. Facing commercial annihilation, Edison launched one of the most vicious smear campaigns in industrial history. His objective was singular and ruthless: to convince the public that Westinghouse's alternating current was not just different, but lethally dangerous. He began a series of grim public demonstrations. Stray dogs and cats were brought before reporters and electrocuted with AC. Calves and horses were publicly zapped to death. The campaign was designed to inextricably link AC power with a painful, agonizing end. Simultaneously, New York State was searching for a new method of execution. The gallows were increasingly seen as barbaric, a relic of a less civilized time. This presented Edison and his allies with a diabolical opportunity. They saw a path to victory not by improving their own product, but by permanently tainting their rivals. They would not just claim AC was deadly, they would make it the official executioner for the state of New York. The man selected for this horrifying experiment was William Kemmler, a vegetable peddler convicted of murdering his common-law wife with a hatchet in a drunken rage. He would be the first human being ever sentenced to die by electricity. On the morning of August 6th, the air in the witness chamber was thick with anticipation. 17 official witnesses, including doctors and reporters, gathered to watch. Before them sat the apparatus of death, a simple oak chair, retrofitted with a headrest, restraints, and 2 electrodes. One would be attached to Kemmler's spine, the other to a metal cap on his shaved head. Both were soaked in a saline solution to improve conductivity. Kemmler was led into the room. Eyewitnesses reported he was calm, almost serene. He looked at the chair and said to the warden, "Take it easy and do it properly, warden. I'm in no hurry." He was strapped in. The leather restraints were tightened. The death cap was lowered onto his head. The switch was thrown. 1,000 volts of alternating current surged through William Kemmler's body for 17 seconds. He went rigid. His fists clenched so tight his fingernails dug into his palms. When the current was shut off, Kemmler's body slumped in the chair. Dr. Edward Charles Spitzka, a renowned neurologist, stepped forward to examine him. After a moment, he declared with confidence, "He is dead." But he was wrong. A low gasp rippled through the witness room. A faint movement was detected in Kemmler's chest. Then, a horrifying, shallow breath. One of the attending physicians, Dr. Carlos MacDonald, screamed, "Great God, he is alive!" Panic erupted. Witnesses fainted. Reporters recoiled in terror. Warden Charles Durston, his face pale, shouted at the executioner, "Turn on the current again, quick! No delay!" The machinery, however, was not designed for a second attempt. The generator needed time to recharge to full voltage. For 2 agonizing minutes, the witnesses were forced to listen to Kemmler's labored gasps as he clung to life, half-cooked in the chair. The smell of burning flesh began to permeate the air. Finally, the order was given. The switch was thrown again. This time, the voltage was doubled to 2,000 volts. The effect was catastrophic. Kemmler's body stiffened with such violence that the straps strained. Smoke began to curl from the electrodes on his head and spine. The capillaries beneath his skin ruptured, turning his face a dark, horrific crimson. A reporter for the New York Times described it as a frightful spectacle. After more than a minute of this brutal assault, the current was finally cut. This time there was no doubt. William Kemmler was dead. The core mystery of this event is not that it failed, but that the failure itself was a feature, not a bug. The execution was never about being humane. It was about being horrifying. The architect of the electric chair was an engineer named Harold P. Brown. While publicly positioning himself as an unbiased scientist, Brown was secretly funded and supported by Thomas Edison. Brown lobbied state officials, wrote articles demonizing AC, and personally designed the execution apparatus. His design was meticulous, with one crucial, calculated specification. It had to be powered by Westinghouse's alternating current. George Westinghouse was appalled. He understood the stakes immediately. This wasn't about justice. It was a targeted corporate attack. He funded Kemmler's legal appeals, arguing that electrocution was cruel and unusual punishment, desperately trying to prevent his company's name from being tainted. He refused to sell AC generators to the New York prison system. His efforts were in vain. Harold Brown and Edison's allies acquired a Westinghouse generator covertly. They had their weapon. The objective was never a clean death. The objective was a public relations victory. The gruesome botched spectacle at Auburn was, from Edison's perspective, a staggering success. It provided undeniable headline-grabbing proof for his central claim that AC was a monstrous, uncontrollable force. It was the killer current, the executioner's current. The horror of Kemmler's death was now fused with the Westinghouse brand. The goal was to ensure that no American family would ever feel safe with the same current that had so publicly and grotesquely cooked a man to death. The aftermath was immediate. Reporters, though disgusted, broadcast every grisly detail across the nation. One wrote damningly, "They would have done better with an axe." For a brief period, the verb "to be Westinghoused" entered the American lexicon as a synonym for being electrocuted. Yet, despite the universal horror of its debut, the electric chair was not abandoned. It became a fixture of the American penal system for over a century. This terrifying device, born not from a desire for humane justice, but from a ruthless corporate feud, cast a long shadow over the dawn of the modern age. The final agonizing moments of William Kemmler served as a catastrophic data point in a war for profit, a chilling intersection of technological innovation, commercial greed, and the ultimate power of the state.